So, burnout, what is it? Why does it happen? And how can we recover from it? These are all really big conversations that I'm seeing pop up all over the place. But one piece of the conversation that I am not seeing as much or that I feel is missing is the self reflection. And so, how do you recognize what led to your personal burnout? And how do you recognize when it starts to happen again? Because, burnout is never a one and done sort of thing. I have had burnout twice. First time I was fired from my job. So I didn't actually have to do any self reflection. My external environment changed so much that kind of, I don't know, solved itself. But the second time I hit burnout, that's when I started doing a lot of deep personal growth and that sort of inner reflection. And that's what really helps and hopefully will help me recognize when it's happening again. And so, first of all, what is burnout? Well, according to Webster's dictionary, burnout is exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, and usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. And so, burnout is really just when you are depleted of energy, have no motivation to work, take care of yourself, or even do the things that used to bring you joy, things you used to really love. Now, most people with burnout do just want to sleep all of the time. And there can be really like no sense of the way forward. You often just feel really trapped, kind of in survival mode, and kind of waiting for the external to get better, which doesn't always happen. So, signs of burnout, sense of failure, self doubt, feeling helpless, trapped, defeated, detachment from friends, family, feeling really isolated and alone in the world, loss of motivation, increasingly cynical or having a negative outlook on life can be a sign of burnout. Which also can lead to decreased satisfaction or a sense of accomplishments. If you are exhausted or also have insomnia, those are signs. I mean, there's signs of a lot of things, but and a lot of those will then also lead to things like dependency on drugs, alcohol, food, shopping, sort of these little addictions that we do as a way of coping when we're really stressed, or if life just seems so bleak and miserable, but you're looking for those little happy hormone kicks, we might, eat or drink alcohol to help numb ourselves or things like that. You also might notice that you get sick more often. They have found that burnout decreases your immune system. So if you are getting sick all the time, that could be a sign of burnout. And then emotional deregulation is a really interesting one. So if you find yourself just like numb and not feeling anything, not really allowing your emotions to come to the surface. So if something happens and you're like, oh, I should feel happy right now, or oh, that is pretty traumatic. Maybe I should feel scared or sad or angry, and you just feel nothing. That's part of emotional deregulation. Or also, if your emotions are all over the place. So, if, like, out of nowhere, you just feel rage or sadness or these sort of unpredictable big feelings come up for no real apparent reason, that's also emotional deregulation. So those are all signs of burnout. They're also signs of lots of other issues. So take this with a grain of salt. Do your own research. See professional help if you need. But so how do you bounce back from burnout? If you're like, yes, I have burnout, how do I not feel this way any longer? First of all, you have to recognize that a deflated ball doesn't bounce. And first, you're going to need to patch up your holes so that you can allow yourself to fill back up. And it may have taken you years to deplete yourself. So don't think that you're going to, or expect that you're going to be cured overnight. So anyone who's promising you a cure in a workshop or with one simple little trick, they are lying to you, or at least really oversimplifying the human condition. Now, I do want to assure you that small steps you take today, they're not pointless. They are building the foundation for huge changes down the road. So don't give up on yourself. Don't think it's all, pointless or there's no hope. Building these small steps, building the foundation, for burnout, it's really a long-term game that you're going to need to play, and it will get easier over time. And this foundation is really going to set you up to prevent burnout from happening again. So hopefully once you start building the awareness, then when it does, you get yourself into a stressful situation in the future, you can start to feel like, oh, I remember last time I hit burnout, these are the things that came up, and this is what I need to do to sort of nip it in the bud. So that is the whole point of building this big foundation. Going to the spa helps, yes, but it's not going to solve a whole lot. And that actually brings us to our first step. So the first step is space and rest. So rest so that you can reflect on what's going on in your life, in your head, in your body. And there's this great book that I found called Sacred Rest by Sandra Dalton Smith, MD. And I heard about this through one of Brene Brown's podcasts, which I also love Brene Brown. So check her out as well, all of her books. If you haven't read Brene Brown, please do, or listen to her podcast. Another great way to access her. Anyways, in this book, she points out that, or breaks down rest into 7 steps or 7 areas. So, there's the physical rest that I think we all think about. Most people are like, oh, I'm so tired. If I got a good night's sleep, all my problems would go away. Well, that just covers physical rest. But then there's mental, emotional, spiritual, social, sensory, and creative. So breaking these down is really going to help you get clear on what areas of your life need more rest or need more support. And I'll quickly go through these in a little bit more detail, but if you want, go out and grab her book and you'll have all that information. And she also does have a quiz in her book and online as well to help you figure out what areas of rest you need. Who doesn't love a good quiz, right? So physical rest, again, like I said, are you physically rested? Is your schedule overbooked? Are you kind of stressed out, physically active all day, every day? Conversely, are you getting enough exercise? Sometimes our bodies do need more than exercise or more activity than what we're giving them, and that can lead to physical stress or, maybe soreness, stiffness, body pains, that sort of thing. Mental rest, are you thinking all the time? And usually this is like sort of anxiety, worry thinking. Do you have control of your own thoughts, or do they control you? This can be a really big problem. I think a lot of us can just let our thoughts run away from us. And we think, oh, but if I think about all the problems, then I'll know how to deal with it when it happens in reality, which is so rarely the case, that you're putting a lot of time and energy into these mental dramas that you play out, that can actually drain a lot of your energy and lead to burnout. Emotional rest. So do you allow yourselves to feel all your emotions? Are you aware of the feelings that are coming up in your body? Again, do you have control of your emotions, or do they control you? This can be a big problem, I think, for a lot of us. I think when we do start to get stressed out, we tend to try and push our emotions away. That's one of the first things that we like, oh, I don't have time to feel these feelings. I need to get this job done, or I need to work on this, or I need to help these other people first, and I will tend to my emotions later. And so we kind of push it aside, and that can only work for so long before we kind of come crashing down. So emotional rest is a big piece. Another one that a lot of us are going to have a hard time with is spiritual rest. I think in the West, we definitely associate spirituality with organized religion. And these two are not the same. So spiritual rest is kind of all about, do you have a life purpose? Do you have passion in your life? What motivates you? This kind of big picture thinking about universal connectedness. Um, this is also connected to hope and having a positive outlook on life. So spiritual connectedness can be a difficult, or spiritual rest can be a difficult one for us to kind of pinpoint because it's not necessarily organized religion. Obviously, it can be if that's a place where you can go to find community and like-minded people. That's great, but it doesn't have to be that. Which leads us into social rest. And social rest, I think a lot of us automatically assume that means a break from people, all the people out there, which it's not. It's actually about having good quality relationships. This is about showing up and holding space for other people, but also allowing yourself to be seen and being held by the sort of community. And building deep connections with other people. It could be one person, it could be 100 people. It depends on you as an individual. And so social rest also ties into spiritual rest, is that universal connectedness. And so this could be something really simple, like, maybe something weird is going on in the office or on the bus, and you make eye contact with someone and just kind of give them a little nod, like, yeah, I see this. We're both witnessing the same thing. We're going to stick together in this situation. That, it doesn't have to be big, I don't know, big gestures or a big sort of involvement. They can be tiny pieces that help us or help you connect to your greater community. Sensory rest. So do you have music or the TV on all of the time? I think a lot of us have some sort of distraction going on. Is your house really cluttered? Are there knickknacks everywhere, piles of papers or things that you need to deal with at some point? This can all lead to, or help lead to, burnout. Being on your smartphone all the time. I think we hear that one quite a bit. But also, do you only eat really salty, fatty foods? Or, do you ever just drink plain water? Are you always drinking something with flavor in it? This can also just add to sensory overload. And then the last one is creative rest. So do you ever just allow yourself to play and being open to creativity coming through you? I think a lot of us feel that we have to kind of force creativity, or it's like an activity that you have to do, but just kind of sometimes being out in nature and, watching ants or bugs build something and being in that wonder, that's going to help with your creative rest and your spiritual rest at the same time. So it's like a win-win. And yeah, like a lot of these areas, they are connected. And so what's going to help with one area is going to help in another. So say, getting out in nature is going to help with sensory, creative, spiritual rest, maybe emotional rest as well. Meditation is going to help with physical rest, emotional, mental rest. So all of these little pieces, I just really like how Dalton Smith really unpacks and breaks down rest so that you can kind of pick a small piece to chip away at. Like when you are super burnt out and exhausted and totally depleted, you really don't have a lot of energy to do anything. So this is just a really great example of how we can break down something that maybe seems too big that you can't deal with. And if you can break it down into really small pieces, you can start to see steps forward. And then that will hopefully allow you to gain momentum as you pull all the little pieces together, just one brick at a time, and slowly build that foundation. Now, the second step is understanding your strengths and values. There are lots of reasons why people burn out, but one of the important pieces is that they are not utilizing their strengths in their job and they're not aligned with their values. And so, if you don't know what your strengths are, this can be a tricky one. A lot of times we don't allow ourselves to see our strengths. This could be a golden shadow piece for you. So you can ask, your manager or friends, family, people that know you, what they think your strengths are, and then you can kind of work from there and say, do I get to use these strengths in my job? Yes, no, how can I implement them? And do some self-reflection along that. With your values, it's really important to know what your values are. So community, money, happiness, efficiency, courage, peace, trust, these are all values. And you can find lists of values online or take quizzes. These are great places to start to help you sort out what are actually your core values and maybe what are values maybe that are more family values or societal values, but they're not your core values. Some people burn out living up to other people's expectations or other people's values. And so you do really need to figure out what are yours. And it is quite shocking when you see a list of like 200 values and you think, oh, wow, yeah, we are all individuals and we're all so different. And what my values are not someone else's. And it's really important to reflect on what brought you to your knees in the first place, and that will help you become aware of what values and boundaries were ignored. And this awareness is really going to help you recognize the early stages of burnout in the future. So there can be a lot of elements coming together to cause your burnout, and which unfortunately makes it really difficult to tease apart. So becoming aware of what caused your burnout, it might take some time. And honestly, you don't have to figure it out all in one sitting. You just need to start making these tiny adjustments, and then things will become clearer as you move along. And also a big piece to remember with values is that your values will change over time. And you need to be aware of these changes and let go of the attachment to values that are no longer serving you. So for example, in your 20s, maybe traveling and independence was a really important value for you. Maybe now you're in your 30s or 40s, and maybe you want to become a little bit more settled, or finances are now a really big value in your life. And you need to allow yourself the awareness that, oh, I don't actually want to travel the way I used to. I would rather put money into a savings account. You need to allow yourself the space to acknowledge that value change. Otherwise, that's going to cause a lot of internal strife in your life. Okay, third step is to look at goals. Goals are really important for us, but we also often set goals that are not really aligned to our true wants and needs. What we think we want is really influenced by our ego and our need to fit in, but also the family and the culture. And so the ego is always judging the world and everything you do through the five senses, and it's deciding, on what you want or who you need to be in order to survive based on these five senses. Now, when goals are made from the ego, they are based solely on the external world and not the internal world. And so this is why sometimes when you obtain that ego-based goal, it doesn't bring you the satisfaction. So you just set a goal on getting more. So, I now need more money, more weight loss, more things, more power, just more, right? More is the cure, isn't it? Now, it's really hard to set goals based on or not based on material desires. After all, we have these five sense experience to experience these types of goals. And it's not wrong to set ego-based goals. It's just that something is missing so that your goal doesn't necessarily hit the target. So instead of ego-based goals, I want you to focus on the feeling you will have when the goal is achieved. The feeling becomes the goal, and then you can start to loosen your attachment to the external goal, to the thing. and then focus on that internal goal. And I like to call these soul goals. And having soul goals are really great when you're burnt out and not sure of even what you want. You just know you don't have it yet. You know, you want to feel better. You want something different. And it can be really hard to figure out what that different thing even looks like when you are, kind of depressed, or you're having a really negative outlook on life. You feel trapped, lost. Sometimes you don't know what the potential could be. So if you can focus on the feeling, then you're going to allow yourself to stay open to the external experience that gives you that feeling. And then you're not going to get lost in trying to figure out all the details, right? So that's taking some mental rest right there. I don't need to figure out the details. I just need this feeling, and I know I'm going to recognize when I feel that feeling and then be like, oh, what am I doing that just like, I just feel happy all of a sudden? What made me happy? Oh, it was a small interaction with the store clerk or something like that. And so you can see there's lots of little spaces of rest that are happening there: social interaction, mental rest, mental awareness, all those sorts of things. And then as you begin to sort of really embody the feeling of achieving these goals, you're going to use that as your sort of compass guiding you forward. And remember, just like your values, your goals are going to change and shift over time. So you're going to need to allow yourself to be flexible to reorientate towards the highest potential. Sometimes we set one goal, and then as we get close to it, it's kind of like being able to see around a corner, and you're like, oh, but now I want to go a little bit further. Or, oh, now I can see that there's a right and a left. And, the original goal was down the left, but I want to go to the right now, which you couldn't see earlier. So letting go of the attachment to the goal bringing you joy and focusing on the joy in the moment, that's can be a very difficult but important piece when it comes to goals. And then the fourth step here is all about happiness and mindset. Now, there is a lot of information out on the internet about happiness and mindset, which can be really helpful, but it also can be very confusing at the same time. Now, happiness and mindset are not about being positive all the time. It's not pushing away the negative thoughts and emotion, but just really sitting with the discomfort and learning from it. So when you are able to sit with your thoughts and emotions, you can get really clear on what actually makes you happy, opposed to what you think makes you happy. Because a lot of times they're two different things. And bringing awareness to your joy and what maybe doesn't excite you is going to allow you to choose that new way forward. So start taking notice about what brings you joy. And these things, they're going to be your acts of self-care. And so this is kind of where self-care comes into the burnout piece. And sometimes there's a piece or like an activity that might not really bring you joy in the moment, but maybe the after effects really lift you up, like exercise. Some days I really hate getting off the couch to go work out or to make a home cooked meal, but I feel so much better after. And so sometimes if you're going to regret doing something, that's when you're going to have to fight for yourself to do the thing that will make you feel better. And just know that this, like, oh, I don't want to, not today, that's just resistance showing up, and acknowledge it for what it is. Don't allow resistance don't use it as a tool to beat yourself with. Be like, oh, I'm so lazy and useless for not doing this thing. No, it's just resistance. And, you need to fight for yourself. I think it's really difficult. Or I find we're so good at being hard on ourselves. So if you can be hard on yourself for the right reasons, that's honestly the best self-care, because it's going to address the long-term gains, not the immediate satisfaction or giving into that resistance. And self-care is really interesting because it gets sold to us in the forms of experiences and products, but it's so much more than that. It's also discipline, organizing meal plans, creating a financial spreadsheet to track your spending, having difficult conversations with loved ones, asking for your needs to be met. So, maybe that's a raise, maybe that's time off, maybe that's just help in general. Demanding that your needs are met is a big form of self-care, and it can be very difficult. Some things of what you can do for self-care. I mean, self-care is so individual, so you have to find what works for you, and then introduce these things slowly into your life. It's obviously going to be a lot harder to integrate a whole new way of being. So if you want to change your diet and start exercising and, I don't know, journaling and doing all these other things, it can be really difficult to make the shifts all at once. So go easy on yourself, especially when you're completely depleted of energy and fully burnt out. This is going to take a while to build up, but some things for you to start with. Meditation. There is sitting meditations. There's active meditations. You can listen to guided ones. Chanting. You sitting in silence in nature. This is something you can do in a group of other people. So again, play around, see what works for you. Exercise is similar. There's running, biking, walking, swimming. You could go to the gym to lift weights. You could do outdoor activities or group fitness. There's a huge variation within a lot of these categories. Diet is a big one for people. So, what does your body need for food? This also depends on how active you are, where you live, what you have access to, all those things, but also noticing what foods actually bring you joy. And this is different from comfort food. Sometimes, like right now, corn is in season. So fresh buttered corn on the cob, so good. That is a food that brings me joy. I wouldn't call it a comfort food. Journaling is a great one. You can journal from journal prompts. You can do dream interpretation. You can write gratitude, do gratitude exercises. Poetry is a great journal exercise. If you're not big into writing, try sketching or painting or collage. All of these types of journal genres are just going to help with self-reflection and to work you through struggles and resistance. So journaling can be a really big self-care piece. Counseling is a really great way to get some self-care going on, because a lot of times our ego doesn't want to see it. So sometimes you do need that outside observer. So this could be, a paid professional counselor. It can be a life coach. This can be personal development workshops, or honestly, just a friend group. Is just having some external help to guide you along the way, to keep you accountable. You can also look at activities that bring you joy. So, maybe that is going to the spa. Maybe that's volunteering or camping, hiking, getting out in nature. Maybe it's cleaning your house and making sure that there's not clutter and dirty dishes everywhere. Maybe it's being creative, or movie nights, or gardening, gaming with friends, pushing your limits, doing something really wild and adventurous. These are all great ways to sort of find activities that bring you joy. And deepening relationships has been found to be the number one thing to increase happiness in our lives. So it's not about having more friends, but about quality relationships. So where you can be vulnerable and support each other. So, this is about reaching out when times are good, so that when times are bad, you have those strong connections. So it's easier to ask for help. Now, I've given you a lot of information, and you might be wondering, how are you supposed to figure this all out? If you knew these answers, why did you hit burnout in the first place then? And this is really tricky because you actually do know the answers. They're just buried really deep in your unconscious mind. And we all operate from, our conscious ego mind. And so there are a lot of things that we aren't really aware of. And this is where the shadow work is going to come into play. So shadow work, if you don't know, it's the term given to looking at the disowned parts of ourselves and sitting with the discomfort, so that we can understand and then integrate, these cut off parts of ourselves. And so once you are aware of your belief system, of your patterns that led to your burnout, then you can sit with them and get curious and sort of figure out what's going on there, and ask yourself lots of uncomfortable questions and dig deep into sort of the fear that was driving you forward, but into the ground. And then once you integrate that, hopefully it can still drive you forward, but maybe upwards and not into the ground. If you want more information on shadow work, you can head over to my website, and I do have, if you scroll to the bottom and sign up, you can get a free intro to shadow work workshop that I did a little while ago, and that can help you out with all that. Or you can check out some of my other videos. But yeah, so to wrap up, basically, bouncing back from burnout is all about self-reflection and getting to know what truly makes you tick, and separating it from what you think you like or what you think you need to do. This is your life, and it's your goal to discover how you want to live it. And don't forget to play. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, or comment below on what area of rest or what led to your burnout, and what insights you've had. I love hearing from you.